Welcome to our introductory video to the Boolean Bible. The idea here is to use computer logic to analyze the scriptures and come up with the proper interpretations, and also assess the interpretations that other people have come up with using logic that's about as flawless as we can get given the consistency and strictures of analyzing things in a computer. So let me tell you a little bit about what I had in mind and what inspired me to come up with the Boolean Bible. I want to give you an impression of what it's like to work with computer logic, how powerful it is, how careful you have to be when using it, and the kind of potential that it has for analyzing situations and also for analyzing text, and why I personally felt compelled to use it in this way. I work as a software engineer, so I use math and logic for projects like this. This is a cloth engine. So the idea is that this object here is supposed to behave somewhat like what real cloth would behave. And you'll notice that it can run into this floor, so the code is detecting collisions. The code is also has a friction limit. It has to pull to a certain amount before it will start to slide, and various other logical and mathematical constraints are involved to make this object behave like cloth. Now the code to make this happen looks something like this gigantic nightmare of math and logic. So, for example, I have n-dimensional arrays full of Einstein summations, and I have arrays full of Boolean tables, and etc., etc. Now, obviously this requires very careful and precise use of math and logic to work, and just as an example, I went in and I decided to change a single character. So I'm going to change the less than sign to a greater than sign, and recompile, and now watch what happens. As you can see, it fails in a very big way. Remember, what I did here was to change one character out of some 800 lines of code, and the whole thing breaks down. I've had a passion for logic and understanding for as long as I can remember. Even as a little kid, people said that I was really analytical. People called me the analyzer. And I also experienced a lot of supernatural events. And I see no reason why I shouldn't apply the same kind of care and precision that I use in computer logic to understanding the supernatural, as well as understanding the Bible. So I'm going to be using the popular programming language Python, mostly because Python happens to be very readable. Its syntax is very similar to the English language. So we need to understand a little bit about how computer logic works. We're also going to look at the occurrence of some logic words in the Bible. And for Bible searches, I like to use blueletterbible.org. It has some incredible search tools. It has several translations of the Bible. It has access to the Greek and the Hebrew manuscripts. And the first logic word I wanted to talk about is the word or. The word or occurs 1,132 times in 866 verses in the KJV. So this here is a simple example of how computer logic uses the word or. I can type something here, and I can get a printout down below. So right here, I have a list of words. I have angry, happy, and sad. And then I'm calling it my first list. And now I have my second list. And this is another list of words: tired, hungry, and evil. And I chose those words purely at random. So now I have a little check here. I'm saying if tired is in my first list, print I found it. So I'm checking this list of words, angry, happy, and sad, for the word tired, and it's not in there. So if I say to the computer, If tired is in my first list, print I found it. Otherwise, print it wasn't there. And let's just ignore this section for now. And I run this, it's going to check to see if the word tired is in this list of 3 words. It wasn't there, it's printed down here at the bottom. Not there. So let's comment this out and get rid of that. And now let's activate this section of words. So now I have, this is written a little different. If tired is in my first list, or if tired is in my second list, print I found it. Otherwise, print it wasn't there. Now you'll notice that tired is not in the first list, but tired is in the second list. So if I find it in the first one, or if I find it in the second one, print I found it. And now when we print I found it, there you have it, the use of the word or in computer logic. It's just like the way we use or in the real world every day. Really simple. Now you'll notice that the Bible uses the word or in exactly the same way that we use it every day, and also that computer logic uses it. I found one of the verses in the search for the word or that used the word or several times, and thought it was a good example. So Revelation 13:17. No man might buy or sell unless he has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So we're looking at different ways of meeting this condition, being able to buy or sell. This is identical to looking for the condition of the word occurring in the list. You could buy or sell if you have either the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Just for the sake of due diligence, let's go ahead and make Revelation 13:17 into a function. So I've got my function here that I wrote already to save time. And my function is to check for buy or sell. And there are 3 conditions that are mentioned relating to whether or not you're able to buy or sell. They are if you have the mark or the name or the number of the beast. So I put those 3 in here into this argument, and it's going to need this information in order to run the function. So if mark is true, or if name is true, or if number is true, then buy and sell is true. Otherwise, buy and sell is false. I put these print statements in here just to give some spaces in the console to make it easier to see. And there are several different combinations of mark, name, and number being true and false that we could use to check how this works. The first one I have, mark is true, name is false, number is true. And if we run it, buy or sell equals true. Now let's try it with mark is false, name is false, number is true. And we get buy or sell is true. Then we have all 3 are false. Oh, look at that. Buy or sell is false. Simple, right? I know what you might be thinking. This is a pointless endeavor. It's obvious what the verse says. Great! I agree with you. That means this logic thing that I'm doing is working. Most of the time it is obvious what the Bible means. So why do people keep insisting the Bible is a matter of one's own interpretation? I've heard people say that literally hundreds of times. I've also found it to be the case that with proper education in any one of a number of well-respected theological schools, people are empowered to make exceptionally stupid errors in interpreting the Bible and sound very impressive in the process. Computer logic used in the way that I'm doing it here is ruthless in destroying doctrines built on speculation and tradition. Some of what we will discover about what the Bible really teaches versus what people think it teaches will be very surprising. You will also continue to be surprised at how plain and simple the Bible really is. So this exercise does a few things. 1, it forces us to look at the logic carefully. 2, it takes emotion out of the passage. 3, it forces us to only get the information from the verse that's actually there. Speculation has no place in this exercise. Now, we could go over all of the logic words that I could think of or find in other lists that people could think of other than me. But that would get really tedious, and there are lots of them. So we'll do one more. We're going to do the word and. So I've got a function here called checking and. And the way this works is I've got the same two lists. My first list, angry, happy, sad. My second list, tired, hungry, evil. Now that I think about it, those three often go together. I'm saying if happy is in my first list, print I found it. Otherwise, print it wasn't there. Look, I found it, it was there. So let's comment this out. So we're getting rid of this part of the code. Now we're going to activate this part of the code. And what this does, it says if happy is in my first list, we're looking for the word happy in my first list. And my first list does have the word happy. So if happy is in my first list and happy is in my second list, happy is not in my second list, print I found it, otherwise print it wasn't there. So what's going to happen if I run this? Oh, it wasn't there. It wasn't in both lists. Now that we've had a little bit of an introduction to this idea of looking at the logic words and using computer functions to extract the meanings using the logic words that are found in the passages, we're going to look at a passage that is sometimes controversial, though I would argue that it really should not be because the passage is clear. However, we will use the computer to show, hopefully in a way that is indisputable, what can be concluded from this passage and what cannot be. So Mark 16:16 says, "He that believes and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believes not shall be damned." I'm using the KJV. It doesn't really matter. It reads approximately the same in every translation that I've seen. So I recently heard a pastor say that this passage proves that you don't have to be baptized in order to be saved. Otherwise, it would have said, whoever does not get baptized will be damned. I've also heard several people, mostly representatives from the Church of Christ, use this passage to try to prove that you must be baptized in order to be saved. Well, we're going to use a computer to see if either of those two conclusions can actually be drawn from the passage. Does this passage teach you don't have to be baptized to be saved? Does this passage teach you do have to be baptized to be saved? So the way that my function works, I have two possible arguments, believe and baptized. Now these can each either be true or false. So we can put any combination of believing and baptized in here. So when it initializes, saved equals none, because we start out with saved, basically it's not determined yet, and then we say if believe and baptized, saved equals true, because the passage says if you believe and you are baptized, you will be saved. Believe and baptized, both true, equals saved is true. Now it also says if you do not believe, you will be damned, you will not be saved. So I have if not believe, so if believe equals false, saved equals false. Now if saved equals true, then print saved. If saved equals false, then print not saved. And otherwise, if the passage doesn't give us that information, then I say this passage does not give us this information. Let's try it with believe and baptized. Let's clear the console here. Alright, if we believe and we are baptized, saved. We are saved if we believe and are baptized, according to what this passage says. Let's try it with believe and not baptize. So believe is true, baptized is false. What does it say about believe and not baptized? This passage does not have this information. Let's try it with we do not believe, but we are baptized. We don't believe, but we're baptized. Not saved. So even if you get baptized, if you don't believe, you're still not saved. And finally, let's check you don't believe, you're also not baptized. Not saved. That's every possible combination of believe and baptized, and everything that can be concluded. So, does this passage teach that you must be baptized in order to be saved? No, it does not. This passage does not have this information. Does this passage teach that you do not have to be baptized in order to be saved? No, it does not. This passage does not have this information. What this passage does tell us unequivocally is that it is impossible to be saved without believing, and anybody who does believe and is also baptized is saved. Now, as to the question of whether or not you have to be baptized in order to be saved, it is possible to show unequivocally with computer logic the correct answer to that question using other passages. However, that information is not in this passage. Hopefully this gives you an idea of the spirit of what I'm trying to do. The Bible does lend itself well to being analyzed by computer logic because it happens to be consistent, precise, and correct in its use of logic. This doesn't happen to work as well on other religious texts, which is part of the reason I have a special respect for the biblical teaching on supernatural matters. In future videos, we'll address some of the more complex and controversial teachings that circulate. We'll also challenge some teachings that many people assume are biblical because they are repeated so often, but that actually come from lots of years of speculations, built on speculations, etc. I hope you'll stay tuned for future videos. Peace out.